"You picked the wrong man to mess with today," Officer Miller sneers, his knee pressing hard into General Adebayo's back. The cold metal of the handcuffs bites into Adebayo's wrists, tight enough to break the skin. "In this neighborhood, we don't like strangers talking back." Sergeant Reynolds looms over him, his shadow falling across the perfectly manicured lawn of the Oak Creek suburb. "People like you should learn some respect." Adebayo memorizes everything: Reynolds' badge number, the small scar above Miller's lip, the smug satisfaction in their eyes. "Check him for weapons," Reynolds commands. Miller's search is rough, a series of unprofessional jabs. He finds a wallet, keys, and a phone, tossing them into an evidence bag. "See something funny?" Reynolds barks, noticing the calm, almost detached expression on Adebayo's face. Adebayo says nothing. They completely miss the military-grade communicator stitched into the lining of his running jacket. "Get him in the car," Reynolds orders. "A few hours in a cell will teach him a lesson." They shove him into the cruiser, slamming his head against the doorframe. They have no clue about the storm they've just unleashed. The clock is ticking, and in exactly 43 minutes, their world is going to come crashing down. Did that story get your blood pumping? Smash that like button to see justice served in more intense thrillers like this one. Black Fables brings you gripping audio stories that pull you right into the action. If you love tales of underdogs turning the tables and a satisfying dose of karma, you're in the right place. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our weekly uploads. Your support helps us tell more stories that need to be heard. Black Fables, where justice has a voice.
2 hours earlier, the morning sun cast long shadows across the pristine lawns of Oak Creek. General Adebayo, dressed in simple running gear, maintained a steady pace along the quiet tree-lined street. This was his routine on the rare mornings he worked from his suburban home, a brief escape into normalcy before a day of global strategic decisions. He was just another jogger, or so he thought. A police cruiser slowed beside him, its tires crunching on the gravel shoulder. Officer Miller was in the passenger seat, his eyes narrowed. "Morning," Sergeant Reynolds said from the driver's side, his tone laced with a false, patronizing friendliness. "Bit far from your neighborhood, aren't you?" Adebayo slowed to a walk, his heart rate remaining perfectly steady. "Good morning, Sergeant. I live a few blocks from here. Is there a problem?" Reynolds and Miller exchanged a look. "We've had some reports of break-ins." "You fit the description," Miller said, stepping out of the car. The description, Adebayo knew, was unstated but clear. "I see," Adebayo replied calmly. "May I ask what the specific description was?" Reynolds got out of the car, his hand resting casually on his holstered weapon. "We asked the questions here. Let's see some ID." Adebayo knew his rights. He wasn't required to carry ID while jogging on a public street. "I don't have my wallet on me, as I'm exercising," he stated, his voice even. "However, my name is Michael Adebayo. I live on Willow Creek Drive." He was careful to be compliant, but not subservient. "Willow Creek," Miller scoffed. "That's a nice area." "You sure about that?" The accusation hung in the air. "Quite sure," Adebayo said. He discreetly pressed the side of his watch, activating the military-grade device's audio and location recording. Every word, every inflection was now being sent directly to a secure Pentagon server. "Look, we're just doing our job," Reynolds said, his patience wearing thin. "But your attitude is starting to be a problem." Adebayo raised an eyebrow. "Requesting clarity on my rights is an attitude." This was the moment the situation turned. To them, his calm articulation was defiance. "We decide what's an attitude," Miller snapped, stepping closer. "We've got a report, and you're not cooperating. Put your hands behind your back." The officers have just crossed the line they can't uncross. They think they're teaching a lesson to a man who doesn't belong, but they're actually writing the final chapter of their own careers. What do you think will happen when Adebayo makes his one phone call? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Black Fables.
"I am not resisting," Adebayo states, his voice a calm, precise instrument. The statement is for the record, the one being streamed in real time to a secure server. Miller shoves him forward, forcing his hands behind his back. The cuffs are ratcheted on, painfully tight. "Stop resisting," Miller grunts, applying pressure even though Adebayo is perfectly still. "We got a real talker here, Sarge," he says, a smug grin on his face. Reynolds laughs. "He'll quiet down soon enough." They push Adebayo into the back of the cruiser. The car smells of stale cigarette smoke and pine sol. As they pull away, Adebayo watches his quiet suburban street disappear. His military training takes over, compartmentalizing the anger and focusing on the mission. This wasn't a random stop. It was a symptom of a deeper problem. "Another one from that new development thinking he owns the place," Miller mutters from the front seat, loud enough to be heard. "Captain's gonna love this. He hates those guys." Reynolds nods, says they bring down the tone of the neighborhood. This one will make a good example. They are admitting to a pattern of targeted harassment, building the case against themselves with every word. Adebayo remains silent, a perfect gray rock. His silence seems to bother them more than any argument would. At the station, the fluorescent lights of the processing room hum loudly. The place smells of sweat and disinfectant. Adebayo stands for his mugshot, his expression unreadable. The camera flashes. "Name," the booking officer, a tired-looking man named Sullivan, asks without looking up. "Michael Adebayo." "Address." Adebayo gives his Willow Creek Drive address. Sullivan stops typing. He looks up, his eyes scanning Adebayo's running clothes, then his face. "Willow Creek?" he repeats, a hint of surprise in his voice. He glances over at Miller and Reynolds, who are laughing by a coffee machine. "You get one phone call," Sullivan says, pointing a thumb toward a stained payphone on the wall. "Make it count." Adebayo walks to the phone. He doesn't dial his wife. He doesn't dial a lawyer. He dials a 10-digit number from memory. The voice that answers is crisp, professional, and a world away from this small-town precinct. "Command Center, Langley." "Authorization code, Zulu Niner Echo," Adebayo speaks clearly. "Initiate Overwatch protocol. Location data is live." There's a brief pause on the other end. "Confirmed, General Adebayo. Response team is en route. ETA is 37 minutes. Adebayo hangs up the phone. The clock on the wall ticks. Miller and Reynolds are still joking, completely oblivious that a Tier 1 military response team has just been scrambled and their careers are now on a countdown. The clock is ticking, and the cavalry is on the way. How do you think two small-town cops will react when the Pentagon shows up on their doorstep? Drop your predictions in the comments below and subscribe to Black Fables.
The interrogation room is cold and sterile. The air is thick with the smell of cheap cleaner, trying and failing to cover up years of fear and desperation. Adebayo sits at the metal table, his back ramrod straight, the tight handcuffs a dull ache on his wrists. He has been waiting for nearly an hour. The door swings open and Sergeant Reynolds walks in, followed by Miller. Reynolds drops Adebayo's belongings, still in the evidence bag, onto the table with a thud. "Ready to talk now?" Reynolds asks, leaning back against the wall with his arms crossed. "I've already made my only statement. I am requesting my right to counsel," Adebayo replies, his voice level and devoid of emotion. Reynolds ignores him. He dumps the contents of the bag. Keys, a slim wallet, and a phone slide across the metal surface. Miller picks up the wallet and flips it open. He pulls out a driver's license, confirming the Willow Creek address. Then his fingers find another card. It's heavy, official, with a holographic seal. He stares at it, a confused look on his face. "Hey, Sarge, you gotta see this." He tosses the card to Reynolds. Reynolds catches it. His eyes scan the card. General Michael Adebayo, United States Army. 4 silver stars gleam under the harsh fluorescent light. For a moment, there's silence. Then Reynolds lets out a short, sharp laugh. A 4-star general? You've got to be kidding me. He sneers, tossing the ID back on the table. Adding impersonation of a military officer to the list of charges. That's a federal offense, genius. Miller chuckles. Thinks a fake ID from the internet is gonna scare us. The door opens again, and a man with captain's bars on his collar enters. Captain Davis is a man used to getting his way, with a face hardened by politics, not police work. What's the holdup, Reynolds? I want this guy processed and booked. The mayor's been getting complaints about joggers who don't fit the neighborhood. Reynolds gestures to the ID. He's claiming to be a general, Captain. Got a real fancy fake ID. Captain Davis picks it up, glances at it, and scoffs. A general who lives on Willow Creek? Unlikely. Teach him a lesson. Make the charges stick. We need to send a message. Just as he finishes speaking, the booking officer, Sullivan, knocks timidly on the doorframe. Captain, he says, his face pale. You've got a phone call at the front desk. Says it's urgent. Davis sighs, annoyed. Who is it? Sullivan swallows hard. He says he's a Colonel Henderson from the Joint Chiefs of Staff at the Pentagon. He's asking if we're holding a General Adebayo. The smug grins vanish from their faces. The air in the room suddenly feels a lot colder. Their little power trip has just been interrupted by the Pentagon. They thought they had a nobody in their interrogation room, but they're about to find out he's one of the most powerful men in the country. What happens when a small-town police captain has to answer to the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Don't miss the epic confrontation.
Captain Davis stares at Sullivan, his face a mask of disbelief. The Pentagon? Don't be ridiculous. It's a prank call. He shoves past the nervous officer and strides to the front desk, snatching the phone. This is Captain Davis, he barks into the receiver. The entire squad room goes quiet, watching him. His posture changes almost immediately. The arrogant bluster deflates. He stands up straighter, his voice dropping several notches. Yes, sir? I understand, sir. No, sir, there has been a profound misunderstanding. Yes, he is here. He is unharmed. I will await your arrival. He hangs up the phone, his hand trembling slightly. He walks back to the interrogation room, his face the color of ash. What was it, Captain? Reynolds asks, still not grasping the severity. A prank? Davis doesn't answer. He walks to the table, picks up the military ID, and stares at it as if seeing it for the first time. It's real, he whispers. Just then, Detective Evans, a veteran officer with 20 years on the force, walks into the room, drawn by the tense silence. What's going on? Sullivan looks like he's seen a ghost. Miller, still clueless, scoffs and points at the ID in the captain's hand. This guy's trying to pass himself off as a 4-star general. Evans takes the ID from his captain. He examines the microprinting, the holographic seal, and the embedded chip. His eyes widen. He looks from the ID to the calm man sitting at the table, then back to his captain. Sir, Evans says, his voice tight with urgency. Do you know what this is? There are fewer than 15 4-star generals in the entire army. This man isn't just a soldier. He's one of the highest-ranking military officers on the planet. Before anyone can process this, Reynolds' radio crackles to life. It's Sullivan from the front desk, his voice shaking. Captain, you need to come out here. 3 black SUVs just pulled into the lot. No license plates. They're not our guys. The interrogation room door swings open so hard it bangs against the wall. A man in a flawless army dress uniform, with the silver eagle of a full colonel on his shoulders, strides in. He is flanked by 2 serious-looking men in dark suits who look like they could break someone in half without spilling their coffee. The colonel's eyes find Adebayo immediately, and he gives a slight, respectful nod. He then turns his gaze to Captain Davis, and the temperature in the room drops 10 degrees. I'm Colonel Henderson,
he says, his voice calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. General Adebayo will be leaving with me now. He pauses, letting his words sink in. As for you, Captain, and your officers, you are to remain here. This station is now the subject of a federal inquiry under the authority of the Department of Defense. Don't touch anything. The cavalry has arrived, and they're not here to make friends. The local cops are about to learn what happens when you harass a man who commands armies. What kind of justice will a 4-star general and the Pentagon deliver? The final, satisfying conclusion is coming. Subscribe to Black Fables and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the epic finale.
The authority in the room had shifted so fast, it was like a physical force. Captain Davis, Sergeant Reynolds, and Officer Miller stood frozen, their uniforms suddenly looking like cheap costumes in the presence of the real thing. One of the men in suits produced a small key and, with a quiet click, unlocked General Adebayo's handcuffs. Adebayo rubbed his wrists, his gaze never leaving the 3 officers who had, minutes ago, held his life in their hands. Colonel Henderson turned to Davis, his expression unyielding. "This wasn't a random jog, Captain. For the past 6 months, the Department of Defense has received a dozen complaints from service members of color about unlawful stops and harassment by your department. We were preparing a federal inquiry. General Adebayo volunteered to confirm the pattern firsthand." He gestured to an aide who placed the small speaker on the table. "He recorded his entire interaction with your officers." He pressed a button, and the interrogation room filled with the officers' own voices, crystal clear. "But far from your neighborhood, aren't you? We've had some reports of break-ins. You fit the description. Your attitude is starting to be a problem." The audio played on, a damning recording of their own prejudice. Miller looked physically ill. The color drained from Reynolds' face as he heard himself laughing about making Adebayo a good example. Captain Davis's order to send a message echoed in the silence that followed. "That's evidence of a conspiracy to violate a citizen's civil rights under color of law," Colonel Henderson stated flatly. Detective Evans stepped forward. "Sir, I can attest to this. I've logged informal complaints about the captain's profiling policies for months. They were all ignored." The colonel nodded. "Your testimony will be crucial, Detective." The men in suits stepped toward the 3 officers. They were not military police. Their credentials identified them as agents from the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division. Captain Davis, Sergeant Reynolds, and Officer Miller. The lead agent said, his voice calm and professional, "You are being placed under federal investigation for civil rights violations, unlawful detention, and abuse of power. You have the right to remain silent." The irony was staggering. The very rights they had denied Adebayo were now being read to them. As they were being led out of the station they once controlled, their careers in ruins, Adebayo spoke for the first time since the colonel's arrival. His voice wasn't angry. It was heavy with the weight of his oath. "We all took an oath to defend the Constitution, not just parts of it, not just for some people, for everyone. You forgot that today." He stood tall. A 4-star general who had just reminded a small town that justice, sooner or later, comes for everyone. If you believe justice should be this satisfying and that stories of accountability need to be told, then your place is here with us. Subscribe to Black Fables, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you powerful audio narratives where the underdog rises, the corrupt fall, and justice has the final word. Black Fables, where justice has a voice.